Captain Ryan Clark had been to dozens of planets, each one strange and dangerous in its own way. He had faced freezing storms, molten lava fields, and creatures that could crush a man in seconds, but nothing had prepared him for what he saw on Vera 6. The planet was covered in endless ice and snow, a white desert stretching as far as the eye could see. The wind cut through every layer of clothing, and the sky glowed with a pale, eerie light. Amid the frozen expanse, he saw her. A small figure crouched on the ice, shivering as though the cold could break her fragile body. Her skin shimmered faintly under the light, with colors he had never seen on any human or alien before. Her hair floated like silver threads in the wind, and her eyes were the most extraordinary thing he had ever witnessed. They glowed green, deep and bright, reflecting the icy world around her. She looked like she did not belong anywhere, not on this harsh planet, not even in the universe. And yet there she was, alone, lost and unafraid of him, even though he approached carefully, weapon at his side. Ryan lowered himself to one knee, trying to appear smaller, less threatening. "Hey," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. She didn't move, but her eyes locked onto his. He could feel a strange connection in that gaze, like she was trying to understand who he was, what he wanted. Something deep stirred inside him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years, not since leaving Earth. The urge to protect. He extended a hand slowly, careful not to scare her. She hesitated, small fingers hovering in the air, and then, almost like a whisper of trust, she touched his hand. It was colder than ice, yet it felt alive. Ryan's chest tightened. He had faced death countless times, but the fragility of this moment, the way she relied on him without words, felt heavier than any battle. "Don't worry," he whispered, though he wasn't sure she understood. "I won't let anything happen to you." The small alien girl tilted her head, her glowing eyes studying him in silence. Then, in a voice softer than the wind, she spoke a single word. "Lyra." That was her name. Ryan repeated it quietly to himself. Lyra. It sounded like hope itself had taken form. The situation was urgent. His mission was clear: evacuate the human survivors of a research colony that had been destroyed by a sudden storm. There was no time, no extra space for anyone else. But Ryan couldn't leave her behind. Her vulnerability pulled at something he had thought was long buried: his humanity. He lifted her carefully, making sure she was secure against his chest. Her weight was light, almost unreal, but it reminded him of how much responsibility he carried. He knew that in another life he might have walked past her without a second thought. But now, as the wind tore at their clothes and the snow whipped across his face, he felt a fierce determination. She would come with him, no matter the cost. As they made their way back to the ship, Lyra's small fingers clung to his jacket. She made soft humming sounds, almost musical, that somehow calmed him even as the storm raged around them. Ryan realized that the bond forming between them was beyond words. It was trust, fragile but unbreakable, and it filled him with a courage he had not known he possessed. When they finally reached the shuttle, Ryan set her down gently, checking that she was warm enough, that she was safe. She didn't speak, but her eyes met his again, and for a moment he thought she smiled. The moment was fleeting, but it was enough to remind him why he had risked everything for her. As the engines roared and the shuttle lifted off, Ryan glanced down at the frozen world disappearing beneath them. He had no idea what dangers awaited them in space. No idea if anyone or anything would accept an alien child aboard a human ship. But as he looked at Lyra, curled up quietly in the corner, he knew one thing with certainty. In this vast universe, humanity is not measured by weapons, technology, or victories. It is measured by courage, by compassion, and by the willingness to protect those who cannot protect themselves. And for Ryan Clark, protecting Lyra was the first choice he had ever made that truly defined him. The first few days aboard the ship were quiet, almost painfully so. Lyra stayed curled in a corner of the small cabin, her glowing green eyes watching everything with a mixture of curiosity and caution. She didn't speak any human language. Instead, she hummed softly, strange musical tones that seemed to rise and fall with her mood. Ryan watched her, fascinated. He realized quickly that she was trying to communicate, but not in words. Ryan tried everything. He showed her pictures, pointed at objects, made gestures. He even wrote simple words on a tablet, hoping she would understand. But Lyra only tilted her head, her luminous eyes studying him as if she was seeing something inside him rather than the symbols he wrote. She understood far more than he expected. He could see it in her gaze, the way she responded to his tone, the pauses before she made a sound. One night, the ship floated through a calm section of space, stars stretching endlessly outside the viewport. The hum of the engines was the only sound. Ryan sat beside Lyra, careful not to frighten her. He had begun to notice subtle changes. When he was near, she would make a soft tone, almost like a sigh of relief. When he spoke harshly to someone else, her glow dimmed slightly. It was clear she felt things deeply, far more than her small body suggested. Ryan reached out and gently took her hand. She didn't pull away this time. Instead, she allowed him to hold it, her fingers curling around his. The warmth, or whatever strange energy her hand held, spread into his chest, filling him with an odd sense of hope and calm. He realized something important. Understanding didn't always need words. Sometimes it was the smallest gestures, the quietest moments that spoke the loudest. Over the next few days, Ryan and Lyra developed a silent language of glances, gestures, and soft hums. A tilt of her head could mean yes or no. A small squeeze of her hand could mean I trust you. Ryan began to understand her moods, her fears, and even her joys. In turn, he tried to teach her simple things. How to open containers, how to move safely aboard the ship, how to trust humans again. Every success, every small step seemed to bring them closer together, but not everything was calm. Ryan knew the universe was unforgiving. Lyra was not just an alien child. She was a treasure, something extraordinary. Others would come for her. Government officials, scientists, or worse, those who would exploit her. Ryan's nights were restless. He imagined her alone, terrified in the hands of people who saw her as nothing more than an experiment, and each time he thought of that, he clenched his fists. He would protect her, no matter what. One quiet evening, he sat beside her again, watching the stars ripple past the window. Lyra made a soft tone, almost a question. Ryan leaned closer and whispered gently, "Do you understand me?" She stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she reached up and touched his cheek. The gesture was simple, yet it carried a weight he couldn't describe. It was trust, acceptance, and something more, an unspoken bond that neither of them could fully explain. Ryan smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in years. He realized that Lyra had taught him something already: empathy, patience, and the power of connection. In a universe so vast and lonely, two beings from entirely different worlds had found a bridge between them. Despite this growing bond, Ryan knew danger was never far away. Every hum of the ship, every flicker on the radar reminded him that their journey was uncertain. But he didn't feel fear, not when Lyra was near. Her presence strengthened him. Her trust reminded him why he had chosen this path. For Lyra, these quiet moments were just as important. She had seen cruelty, loneliness, and fear on Vera 6. But now, in the calm of space, she felt something she had never known: safety, understanding, and a strange new feeling she couldn't name but that warmed her small heart. Ryan Clark had become her protector, her guide, and somehow a friend. As the ship sailed silently through the stars, the two of them sat together hand in hand, neither needing words. Between their glances and hums, they shared a promise. Whatever the universe might throw at them, they would face it together. The hum of the ship had always been a comforting sound, steady and predictable. But that night it felt different, tense, as if warning them that danger was near. Ryan Clark was in the cockpit scanning the stars with practiced eyes. Lyra sat quietly beside him, her glowing green eyes reflecting the countless points of light outside. She hummed softly, a sound that usually meant calm, but tonight it carried a note of worry. Ryan's instincts screamed before the sensors even beeped. Multiple contacts approaching fast, he muttered under his breath. He tapped the controls, adjusting shields and weapons. His crew members sprang into action, but Ryan knew something. These were no ordinary raiders. They were professional, heavily armed, and hungry for alien technology. And Lyra, she was the prize. The first missiles streaked through space, their red trails burning bright against the blackness. Ryan shouted orders, moving the ship with precision that only years of combat could teach. Lyra clutched his arm, her small body trembling, and Ryan's chest tightened. He had faced death countless times, but this, protecting her while being hunted, was different. It was personal. Every decision, every maneuver had to keep her alive. One raider ship came too close, firing a barrage that rocked the hull. The crew scrambled, holding on as sparks flew. Lyra's soft hum turned into a high, frightened pitch. Ryan grabbed her, pulling her close, shielding her with his body as he returned fire. She pressed her face against his chest, and for a moment, he felt the weight of responsibility crushing him. Her life, so fragile, was in his hands. The attack went on for hours. The raiders were relentless, circling and striking whenever they found an opening. Ryan had to think fast. He knew brute force alone would not save them. He began to use the ship's environment, asteroid fields, gravitational pulls, narrow passages, to his advantage. The maneuvers were risky, but Ryan had faith in his skill. And he had faith in Lyra's presence beside him. Somehow, her quiet trust gave him strength he did not know he had. During one particularly dangerous turn, a missile struck near the cargo bay. The explosion shook the ship violently. Lyra screamed, a sound so raw and pure that Ryan felt it in his bones. He sprinted through the smoke and flames, dodging debris until he reached her. He scooped her up again, holding her tight as alarms blared around them. "I've got you," he shouted, though the words seemed small against the chaos. She pressed closer, her trust unwavering even in the middle of terror. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ryan found a path through the asteroids that forced the raiders to break formation. He piloted the ship with every ounce of skill, weaving through massive rocks, narrowly avoiding collisions. The ship shuddered, systems failing one by one, but Ryan never faltered. Lyra's small hand squeezed his arm, and in that simple gesture he found a renewed determination. He would not fail her. Not now, not ever. As they broke free from immediate danger, Ryan allowed himself a brief glance at her. She looked at him with wide, glowing eyes, trembling but alive. He knelt beside her, brushing a stray lock of her silver hair from her face. "We're not out of this yet," he said softly, but even as he spoke, he knew she had changed something inside him. Protecting her wasn't just a duty anymore, it was a purpose, a reason to fight harder, to survive against impossible odds. In that moment, Ryan understood something important. Courage was not measured by facing the enemy alone. It was measured by protecting someone who could not protect themselves. Lyra had become more than a companion. She was a symbol of hope in the darkness, a reminder that humanity was more than weapons and wars. It was love, trust, and the willingness to stand between the innocent and danger. As the ship limped through the black of space, Ryan adjusted the shields and took a deep breath. The threat was still out there, but he felt something he hadn't felt in years: absolute clarity. No matter what came next, he would protect Lyra, and somehow together they would survive. The ship was badly damaged. Fires burned in the corridors, warning lights flashed constantly, and the hum of the engines was uneven, like the heartbeat of a dying creature. Ryan Clark moved quickly, checking on his crew and the systems that were still functional. His eyes constantly flicked to Lyra, who huddled in the corner of the cabin, her glowing green eyes wide and frightened. She had grown quiet since the attack, but he could feel her fear, her trust and the small spark of hope she still carried. Ryan knew the situation was critical. The raiders were still out there, tracking them relentlessly. Every jump through space brought them closer to danger, and the ship could not sustain another attack. The crew gathered in the control room, their faces pale and exhausted. Someone had to make a decision, and Ryan understood instantly what that meant. Someone had to stay behind to hold the ship long enough for the others to escape. He didn't hesitate. Ryan looked at his crew, then at Lyra, and spoke with quiet authority. "I'll stay. Get her out. Take everyone else with you. I'll make sure the path is clear." His words were calm, but inside his heart pounded. He had always faced death before, but this was different. Leaving Lyra, even knowing she would survive, was unbearable. Lyra noticed the change in his tone. Her small hands reached for his arm, glowing faintly as if trying to hold on to him with everything she had. Ryan knelt down, looking into her eyes. "I'll see you again," he whispered. It was the closest he could come to promising her hope. She tilted her head and made a soft sound, a small hum that seemed to say, "I trust you." That was enough for him. The crew activated the evacuation sequence. The small shuttles began moving toward the escape route, carrying Lyra and the others away from the damaged ship. Ryan stayed behind, strapping himself into the pilot's seat. Every alarm, every flash of light reminded him of the danger surrounding him. But he drew strength from the thought of Lyra's tiny hand in his memory, from the soft hums that had become a part of him over the past days. As the first shuttle jumped to safety, Ryan took control of the ship, steering it through the asteroid field with precision. Missiles fired by the raiders streaked past, narrowly missing his ship. Sparks flew from damaged panels and smoke filled the cabin, stinging his eyes. Yet he moved with a calm determination that only came from knowing what truly mattered: her life. Hours passed like minutes. Ryan used every trick he had learned over his years in combat, dodging, weaving, and striking back at the raiders when he could. Each maneuver was calculated, precise, but each one brought him closer to exhaustion. The ship groaned under the strain, but Ryan refused to give in. He could feel Lyra's trust in him, and he could not betray it. Finally, he saw the last shuttle jump to safety. Lyra was gone from his view, but her presence lingered in his mind, glowing like the green light of her eyes. Ryan allowed himself a single deep breath. The raiders were still nearby, but he had fulfilled his purpose. He had protected her even at the cost of staying behind. For a moment, in the quiet of the damaged ship, Ryan closed his eyes. He remembered her small, fragile body in his arms, her trust and the soft tones she had used to communicate. She had taught him something he could not forget. The strength of humanity was not in weapons or technology, but in courage, compassion, and the willingness to sacrifice for those who could not defend themselves. As the ship drifted through the black of space, Ryan Clark knew the universe was vast and cruel, but he also knew that some bonds were stronger than any danger. Lyra's trust had given him a purpose greater than survival, something worth every risk, every danger, every moment of fear. And even if he never saw her again, even if the universe claimed him, he would never regret the choice he had made. Protecting her had been the most human thing he had ever done. Silence filled the shuttle after the explosion faded behind them. The small crew sat in shock, staring out of the window at the burning wreck of the main ship. The blue flames drifted like ghosts in the darkness of space. Lyra sat near the viewport, her small hands pressed against the glass, her glowing green eyes reflecting the destruction. She didn't understand human technology, but she understood loss. She felt it deep in her chest like a cold ache that wouldn't fade. Ryan was gone. The humans around her whispered quietly, their faces pale and tired. Some spoke of bravery, others of survival, but Lyra didn't listen. Her focus remained on the empty darkness outside, where the ship had vanished. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, his face calm even in danger, his hands steady when everything was falling apart. He had promised, "I'll see you again." The words echoed in her mind like a heartbeat that refused to stop. When the rescue ship finally arrived, the survivors were brought aboard a large cruiser. The crew welcomed them with relief, treating their wounds and offering food and rest. But Lyra stayed silent. She refused to eat, refused to move far from the small window in her new cabin. Every time someone tried to speak to her, she only shook her head and hummed softly, a sound that carried both sadness and hope. The captain of the rescue cruiser watched her quietly. "She's not human," one of the medics whispered. "What is she?" "No one knows," the captain said softly. "But she's alive because someone chose to save her." Lyra understood none of their words, but she understood emotion. She could feel the sorrow that hung in the air, and it mirrored her own. Yet amid the sadness there was something else, a warmth she didn't expect. She could feel Ryan's energy still lingering, not in the air but inside her. It was as if his strength had passed to her the moment he made that sacrifice. Days turned into weeks. The crew tried to continue their mission, but Lyra remained a quiet presence among them. At night, when the ship drifted through the endless stars, she would hum to herself. The same melody Ryan once said reminded him of home. The sound filled the ship's corridors, soft and haunting, reaching even those who didn't understand it. The humans who heard it would stop for a moment, feeling something deep, something pure. One evening, as the stars shimmered across the window, Lyra sat with a piece of Ryan's jacket that she had managed to keep. It was torn, burnt in places, but it was all she had left of him. She held it close, as if it still carried his warmth. "You are stronger than you think," she whispered softly, the phrase he had said to her before every danger. Her voice trembled, but her eyes glowed brighter than ever. For the first time, she didn't feel like a frightened creature from another world. She felt like something new, someone who had learned courage from a human heart. When the captain entered the room, he found her sitting there, her small body glowing faintly in the dim light. "We'll reach Earth soon," he said kindly. "You'll be safe there." Lyra looked up at him and nodded. She didn't know what Earth meant, but she understood the tone. It was a promise. Safety, home, words she had never known before meeting Ryan. Before the captain left, he paused at the door. "He gave everything to protect you," he said softly. "Do you understand what he did for you?" Lyra closed her eyes and placed her hand over her heart. "Yes," she whispered, her voice fragile but clear. "He gave me life." The captain's eyes softened. He left her alone, but her words stayed with him long after. That night, Lyra lay on the small bed staring at the stars through the window. She imagined Ryan somewhere out there, his spirit drifting through the same sky watching over her, and though her heart still ached, she smiled softly. Because she knew he hadn't really left her. He lived on in her courage, in every breath she took, in every hum she made. And for the first time since that terrible day, Lyra whispered a new word she had learned from the humans, a word she spoke with hope and love. Home. The stars outside the cruiser drifted like slow-moving fireflies, endless and quiet. Days had passed since Lyra last saw Ryan. To the humans on the ship, life was beginning to return to normal. The engines hummed softly. The crew spoke again. Laughter began to echo faintly in the halls. But for Lyra, time had stopped. She spent most of her hours in the observation deck staring into the endless darkness. Sometimes she would place her hand against the cold glass and imagine Ryan's reflection smiling back at her. She could almost hear his voice, calm, steady, filled with warmth, telling her not to be afraid. One night, when the ship was moving through a quiet sector of space, the lights dimmed to a soft blue glow. Lyra sat alone by the large window, watching the stars drift by. The captain entered quietly and stood beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was peaceful but heavy. "He was a brave man," the captain said softly. "Men like him are rare." Lyra didn't answer. She couldn't speak the way humans did, but her eyes glistened with emotion. She turned slightly, looking up at the man who reminded her of Ryan. not because of his face but because of the kindness in his tone. The captain sighed. We tried to find his body. There was nothing left, but his actions saved all of us. He made sure we lived. Lyra's small hands trembled. She reached for the small piece of Ryan's jacket she always carried and held it close to her chest. She could feel the warmth of her own glow reflecting off the fabric, like his spirit was still alive in her light. The captain noticed and said gently, "He would have wanted you to live, to be happy." Lyra turned to face the stars again. Her lips parted, and for the first time she spoke softly in human words, broken but clear. "May I tell you something?" The captain froze. He had never heard her speak before. Her voice was soft, fragile, like a melody carried by the wind. He nodded slowly, unsure if she would continue. Lyra looked down at her hands and whispered, "He taught me to feel." Her words came out shaky, filled with emotion she could no longer hide. Before him, I was alone. I did not know what it means to trust, to care, or to be safe. Her small fingers pressed harder against the fabric of his jacket. He showed me kindness, even when he was afraid. Her eyes filled with tears that shimmered under the dim light. When he held me, I felt warmth. When he looked at me, I felt seen. He was human, but his heart, it was more than that. It was light. The captain's throat tightened. He wanted to say something, but words felt too small. Lyra looked up again, her glowing green eyes meeting his. "I will never forget him," she whispered. "Never." Her voice was barely a sound, but it carried through the silence like a promise written into the stars. The captain placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, and for a moment, they simply stood there, two beings from different worlds, united by the memory of one man's sacrifice. After the captain left, Lyra stayed by the window. She looked out into the darkness, her reflection glowing faintly against the glass. "Ryan," she whispered softly, her voice trembling. "Can you hear me?" There was no answer, only the quiet hum of the ship. But suddenly a streak of light passed across the stars. A comet, bright and beautiful, trailing silver and blue across the endless black. Lyra's eyes widened. She smiled through her tears. To her it wasn't just a comet. It was him. It was Ryan saying goodbye in his own way. She pressed her hand to the glass and whispered again, "I will keep your light. Always." Her glow brightened, filling the room with a soft green radiance that reflected off the metal walls. The crew passing by outside stopped for a moment, drawn by the beautiful light coming from the observation deck. No one said anything. They all just felt something pure, peaceful, and full of meaning. That night, Lyra fell asleep by the window, still holding the piece of his jacket close to her heart. For the first time since he was gone, her dreams were gentle. She saw him smiling at her, his voice whispering the same words that had guided her since that cold day on Vera 6. "You are stronger than you think." And when she woke, the stars seemed brighter, as if the universe itself had heard her promise. Years passed. The stars changed, but the memory of Ryan Carter never faded. Lyra had grown stronger since that day. The humans had welcomed her to Earth, a planet filled with warmth, life, and sound. She learned their ways, how to walk among them, how to speak, and how to live. But no matter how much time passed, she carried his name like a heartbeat within her soul. Every morning she visited the same place, a quiet hill outside the human city. From there she could see the sky stretch endlessly above, glowing blue during the day and full of stars at night. She always sat there with a small metal pendant hanging around her neck. Inside it was a piece of Ryan's jacket, the last thing she had left of him. She often spoke softly to the wind. "You showed me light," she whispered. "I will show others." The humans who met her didn't know who Ryan was. To them, Lyra was a symbol of peace, an alien who had once fought beside humanity and now helped heal the bond between their worlds. But for Lyra, Ryan was never just a soldier or a savior. He was the reason she believed in kindness. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in soft orange light, Lyra saw a group of young human children playing nearby. They laughed, ran, and rolled down the grassy hill. One little boy fell and scraped his knee, and before anyone could react, Lyra rushed to him. Her hands glowed faintly green as she placed them on the child's wound. The glow shimmered softly, and in seconds the pain faded away. The boy stared in amazement. "Thank you," he said with a smile. Lyra smiled back, tears filling her eyes. His voice, so innocent, so full of life, reminded her of Ryan. "You're welcome," she whispered, her voice gentle. When the boy ran off again, Lyra looked at her glowing hands. "You taught me this," she murmured, her voice trembling with emotion. "You taught me to care." As the night came, she remained on the hill, looking at the stars. They sparkled like diamonds scattered across the sky. Somewhere out there, she believed Ryan's spirit was watching. She could almost hear him laughing softly, telling her she'd done well. Then came the moment that would stay in her heart forever. A small wind brushed past her, warm and light. The grass swayed softly, and in that quiet motion she heard it, his voice. "Lyra." It was faint, carried like a whisper through the air. Her breath caught. She looked around, her heart racing. "Ryan," she whispered. "Is that you?" There was no answer, only the sound of wind. But in that silence she felt it. Peace. A feeling that wrapped around her like a gentle embrace. She closed her eyes, smiling through her tears. "Before I left," she whispered to the sky, repeating his old words. "You told me to be strong. I kept that promise. I lived." Her tears fell, not from sadness, but from love that had never died. "And before you left," she continued softly, "I whispered something too. Do you remember?" She looked up at the stars, her voice steady but full of feeling. "I told you I would never forget you." At that moment, a brilliant light appeared above her, a comet streaking across the heavens, glowing white and silver. Lyra gasped softly. The same kind of comet she had seen the night she lost him. It passed slowly, leaving a long, shimmering trail that filled the sky. She smiled, whispering, "I know. I see you." The light faded, but the warmth remained in her chest. She pressed the pendant close to her heart and stood up. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of earth and wind. For the first time in a long while, she felt complete. When she walked down the hill, the stars shone brighter than ever before. The humans nearby looked up too, whispering about the strange, beautiful comet that crossed the sky that night. None of them knew its meaning, but Lyra did. It wasn't just light. It was a reminder that love, even between two worlds, never truly ends. That night she wrote a message in her journal, a small book she always kept beside her bed. The last page read, "Before I left, the alien girl whispered, 'May I tell you something?' I'll never forget her words because they became mine." Lyra closed the book and looked at the stars one last time before sleeping. And somewhere, beyond the reach of galaxies, a human soul smiled, knowing his light still lived in the heart of the one he saved.